Good evening and welcome to Tucker Carlson Tonight. One of the great secrets of Washington, something we don't tell anybody outside the city, is that the only people who really benefit from the presidential primaries are the political consultants who work in them. The candidates themselves almost always finish the experience sadder, poorer, and humiliated. The public, meanwhile, hates the whole thing. They get to spend half a year tormented by the white noise of 30-second attack ads. Only the consultants really seem to enjoy themselves, and why wouldn't they? They walk away rich. For them, it's a great deal. So they've got every incentive to recruit new suckers to the game. Their latest mark is a billionaire called Howard Schultz. He's the former CEO of Starbucks. A pair of slick consultants somehow convinced Howard Schultz that he could be president. So over the weekend, he announced he may get in the race. Here's the twist. Schultz, who is an entirely conventional affluent liberal, said that he is not planning to run as a Democrat, but instead as an independent. Well, Democrats were horrified by this. Boycott Starbucks started trending on Twitter. Michael Bloomberg denounced Schultz. Some on the left were so angry they screamed at Howard Schultz when he went in public. Watch what happened at a book event last night.
Don't help elect Trump, you egotistical billionaire. Go back to getting ratioed on Twitter. Go back to Davos with the other billionaire elite who think they know how to run the world. That's not what democracy needs.
Well, in fairness, the heckler did make some solid points. The last thing we need is another egomaniacal Davos moron running the country into the ground. If you sincerely thought Barack Obama did a great job as president, you'd probably be perfectly happy with Howard Schultz at the helm. The problem is nobody really thinks that Obama did a great job as president. They just all feel obligated to pretend he did. Nobody wants to be rude about it. And yet Schultz's problems aren't really related to what he believes, his political positions. His views are really indistinguishable from Nancy Pelosi's views. Schultz's sin is running third party. That's a threat to the one thing that Democrats actually care about. And no, it's not fighting climate change or preserving a woman's right to choose or even protecting those noble undocumented migrants they're always lecturing you about. In the end, Democrats are pretty flexible on all that stuff. They're just talking points. They're transactional bargaining chips to keep their coalition together, whatever. What Democrats really want, what they're not kidding about at all, is political power. The right to run things, the right to be in charge, power. And they want it so bad they can taste it. Poor hapless Howard Schultz and his overfunded midlife crisis just got in their way. So they have to crush him. At least one Democrat was honest enough to admit this.
I have a concern that if he did run, that essentially it would provide Donald Trump with his best hope of getting reelected. I would suggest to Mr. Schultz to truly think about the negative impact that might make.
Well, the media were watching and taking notes. Even now, you still hear people refer to the press corps as liberal. But of course, they're not liberal in any recognizable sense of the word. Genuine liberals would welcome Howard Schultz into the race. More candidates, more opinions, more diversity of thought. May the best ideas win. That's what an actual liberal would say. That's not what the media are saying. They're not liberals. They're loyalists. They're party people. Diligent worker bees toiling from the benefit of their Democratic Party masters. So, of course, they parroted the line precisely. Michelle Goldberg of the New York Times, who embodies this, called Schultz's run reckless idiocy. She didn't even mention his views about anything. She doesn't care. It's irrelevant. The Daily Beast all but accused Howard Schultz of racism because that often works as a line of attack. Quote, the Starbucks music store under Howard Schultz was painfully white, read a story today. Whatever it takes. And of course, the dummies on TV news read their talking points faithfully. Watch.
He may run for president as an independent. Democrats fearing he could help President Trump win re-election.
Democrats are uneasy.
He could take away votes that would go to the Democratic nominee.
Democrats warn he could cost them the White House.
Democrats fear that could be disastrous for whoever is the Democratic nominee.
Democrats on the left are freaking out today about Howard Schultz trial ballooning this. Is that if he were to split the anti-Trump vote, that's a conceivable path up the middle for Donald Trump.
Oh, Trump might benefit. Well, there's another way to look at the Democratic hysteria over Howard Schultz getting into the race. And Mark Cuban, of all people, summed it up pretty well today. Quote, if 21 months before an election, you don't believe your candidate's platform is strong enough to win an election with independent candidates, you might want to rethink who you support. Yeah, you might want to do that. Maybe get some ideas that appeal to actual voters, something like that. The irony is that the very people who are the most upset about Howard Schultz entering the presidential race are the very same ones who've been yelling at you about how vital democracy is and how they're the defenders of democracy. And yet somehow 3 candidates on a single ballot is just way too many for them. You get the strong feeling they prefer to see just one candidate on the ballot. That way they'd win every time. Voters couldn't screw it up with their dumb opinions. We've seen all of this before many times. Ralph Nader went through it when he dared to run third party in 2000. Jill Stein experienced it when she ran in 2016 on the Green Party ticket. Remember that? They called her an agent of Russia for daring to do that. They never charged her for that crime, though, so she's free to join us tonight. And she is, Dr. Jill Stein, with us now. Dr. Stein, thanks very much for coming on. You'd think that the party of diversity would be for more diverse views, but they're not. Why is that?
Well, I'm not sure it's actually the party of diversity. We got 2 parties, and they're both working for corporate masters and the fossil fuel giants and the big banks and Wall Street and the war machine and so on. So, that's not my opinion that, that the Democrats are the party of diversity. But let me say, voters deserve more choices. And, in the last election, we saw over 100 million voters. The largest block of voters is not voting because they're not being represented by the system. So we really do need more choices. We need non-corporate choices and people-powered choices. And we can have those choices without fear of splitting the vote. There is a win-win solution here. It's called ranked choice voting. The state of Maine just passed it. It's used by millions of voters around the country. So it really makes obsolete this whole issue of, the struggle between, well, can we have choices or do we have to force people into 2 pigeonholes that, the majority of voters, almost 60% of voters are saying that we need a new independent political party because they're tired of being thrown under the bus by the other 2, whether we have Democrats or Republicans. It's not working out so well for everyday working people
I think that's probably
don't have
right.
health care. They're locked into debt and so on. We need more choices, and we can have it. So let's not keep that a secret. We should require, these electeds to actually pass a simple reform. The state of Maine just did it. It's available to us right now. We can have it before the 2020 election.
I've followed that pretty closely because I'm interested in Maine. I'm not sure I understand ranked choice voting, or many people in Maine understand it. But I wonder, the broader question seems
pretty...
Well, they
think they do.
Maybe they do, and maybe I will if I studied harder. But the broader question of should you have... You could not. Trust me, I've tried. But here's the broader question. Why do the media cooperate with this effort to shut down anybody who offers an actual choice to what we have? Why wouldn't they be open-minded enough to let the candidates speak their piece, let voters decide, and the system work the way it's supposed to? Why do they have to crush people, accuse them of being Russian agents, if they have a different view?
Well, if they were doing their job, their job is to educate voters, not to tell voters or to pigeonhole voters or to vilify voters for expressing their discontent with 2 parties that have thrown them under the bus. In the last election, we had 2 candidates who were the most disliked and untrusted in modern history. And 75% of voters were screaming for open debates. They wanted to hear from the Libertarian and the Green. They wanted to hear a debate about, for example, our war machine, which is going full speed ahead right now. The last tax day, the average taxpayer gave over $3,500 practically to the war machine and $40 to the EPA to give us clean air and water. How's that working out for us? Not
so are you
well.
going to run it?
This needs to be debated.
Well, I think everything needs to be debated. I'm totally, and that's a place where we agree vehemently. Are you going to run again in 2020, do you think?
I do not have any plans to run at this point. There's plenty else to do, and I feel like I've done my duty this time around.
Yeah.
And it's time for someone else to carry that banner. But I'm certainly fighting for the cause of more voices and more choices in our political system.
I agree with that 100%. And you're not a Russian agent if you think that. Dr. Jill Stein, thank you very much.
Thank you, Tucker.
Bernard Whitman is a Democratic pollster. He worked with Bill Clinton and the founder of Whitman Insight Strategies. Bernard, thanks very much for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
So I don't understand, or maybe I do understand, and that's why I'm offended, the reaction against Howard Schultz, who, for the record, I think is a dilettante and a buffoon and not what we need. I'm not endorsing Howard Schultz. But the idea that anybody who might threaten the party needs to be destroyed strikes me as kind of a Stalinist reaction, doesn't it?
Let's call a spade a spade. Howard Schultz has no experience, no platform, no constituency, and no reason for running other than a pure vanity play. If he, as I take him at his word, is really a Democrat, he should toss us out in the Democratic primary process, and I would welcome him and welcome that debate. I think everyone else would as well. But let's explore why he's not doing that, because there's another guy in there named Michael Bloomberg who has far more experience, who has a demonstrated record of actually creating constituencies and moving agendas forward, who's devoted years and years and years of blood, sweat, tears, and money to progressive causes like climate change, like gun control, who was a mayor for 12 years of the largest and most diverse city in the United States. And he has a lot more money than Howard Schultz. Howard Schultz is scared that Michael Bloomberg would get into the Democratic primary and leave no room for him to operate. That's why.
So in other words, he's just the wrong billionaire? Okay. So let me just say, I don't think there's any doubt.
He's the wrong candidate.
Okay, but I don't think there's any doubt about Howard Schultz's commitment to fashionable progressive politics. He turned his own stores into homeless shelters, so that's like the most authentic thing you can do, I think, to prove your bona fides. You just don't like it because his getting in might hurt the party, and I wonder if voters might think, like, who cares about your dumb party? What are the ideas you're proposing? Do you see what I'm saying? Like, maybe it should be about the issues and not the party.
So let me explain. I wish the American political system were different, but it's not. Right now, there is no viable room for a third-party candidate to run. I studied this extensively in 2012. Mike Bloomberg studied this extensively in 2016. Ironically, the nation is so divided right now that at this point in time, with President Trump in office, a vote against President Trump needs to go to a candidate that actually has a chance of winning. There is no conceivable place for someone in the middle right now between the two parties. We are so divided that there's actually, ironically, no room left. So get in the process, get with one of the two political parties, put your hat into the ring, let's have an honest debate. The reason why this is so important and Democrats are so upset about it is the future of the country is at stake, the future of the climate, the future of the country, the future of the environment, the future of the economy, the future of undocumented workers.
That's all bogus.
It's not.
I mean, that's totally bogus. Look, okay, so you just said, Democrats are upset that Schultz is trying to buy the office, right? He's a billionaire. We don't need more billionaires. No, but hold on. You've heard people attack him as a billionaire, but it would be totally cool if Michael Bloomberg bought the office as long as he was
I don't mind he's a billionaire at all. I think running on a record of business success is perfectly fine, but run in the system that we have. Don't try to spoil the system on a vanity play. There is no conceivable route for him to win.
But people said that about, just to play devil's advocate here, and maybe you're right. I don't think he can win. I agree with you there. But then no one thought Trump could win. Unexpected things can happen. People are deeply dissatisfied with the parties.
Who thought Trump could win? Anyone who's actually paying attention realized once he had the chance of winning the Republican primary, he has a 50-50 shot at being president. Let's do the math. Just listen to me for one second. Let's do the math. Let's say he runs. Schultz runs as an independent. There are at least 100 electoral votes who would definitely go from liberal states like California, like New York, for the Democrat. There are at least 175, 180 electoral votes that would go from hardcore southern states, right-wing states in the West and the South. That's over 280 votes. There's no room left. That would mean that no one got a majority, no one was able to get a majority in the Electoral College, and that would be passed to the House of Representatives. Does anyone really think that the democratically controlled House of Representatives is going to vote to elect Howard Schultz? There's no math that allows Howard Schultz to
So very quickly,
president.
I do have one last math question, super quick, since you've worked in politics. The two consultants, well, I know them both, one a Republican, one a Democrat, who convinced poor Howard Schultz to live out his midlife crisis by running for president. How much do you think they're going to walk away with? Conservative estimate.
You know what? I'm all for business. I hope they walk away with as much money as they possibly can make. And the only real winners are going to be Steve Schmidt and the other
Bill Burton.
Yeah. I'm sure they're great guys, and more success to them.
They're rich guys for sure. That's unbelievable. What a scam this all is. Bernard, thank you very much. Great to see you.
Thanks, Tucker.